Now, a Bible preacher who fell foul of coronavirus laws during the first lockdown has had the case against him dropped by the Crown Prosecution Service after a complaint from a member of the public. 56-year-old Mike Phillips was given a £60 fine and moved on by police in Taunton in Somerset, where he'd regularly preached for the best part of a decade. His case was subsequently taken up by the Christian Legal Centre. Mike Phillips is a lawyer for the centre and he's here in the studio. Mike Phillips, appreciate you coming in. Thanks very much indeed. 10 years he'd been preaching roughly in this spot.
Yes.
But we understand during the first lockdown especially, which was particularly rigorous, that the full force of the state with the police behind them were keeping everybody who, unless they had a very, very good reason for being on the streets, were keeping people off the streets.
Yes, that's what was happening. And I think the thing is this, is that we saw a real influx of calls at that time, not just calls, but also of arrests, of prosecutions, and virtually all of those have now fallen away. And some of those have gone to trial. Many people have been acquitted, some cases have been dropped, and Mike Phillips is probably quite a well-known street preacher. But eventually, after making some representations to the Crown Prosecution Service, they decided that it was not in the public interest. Maybe if it had been 6 months before, maybe a year ago, when we made these representations, although the case had been adjourned a number of times, they may not have taken the same view. But I think hopefully now some common sense has re-entered into the Crown, whereas before it was really almost slightly hysterical at some point.
Was there a sense in which he was looking for trouble a little bit? I mean, I'm told he has a camera, he wears a camera. I mean, you could see why somebody would want to slightly play the martyr card, perhaps.
I think the thing is this, he wears a camera because people so frequently make up things against him, and that has been proved time and time again. Not just him, but other people in that situation. So on legal advice, he's doing that for that reason. I think the thing is this, is that he went out because he believes, as many Christians do, that even at times when things are very difficult, during pandemics and so on, it's the church's job to give people hope at those times. And there's been a history going back hundreds of years. Even Spurgeon himself, who's a famous preacher in London, he commended people for going out during a particular cholera outbreak. So he was adhering to all the rules and so on. He, according to the legislation, he was allowed to be out because it says you can be out if you're a charity worker and if you can't do your job at home. So I can understand why some people might have concerns, but at the end of the day, he believed he was acting within the law, and it seems as though the Crown Prosecution Service as well have seen sense.
Christianity is a proselytising religion. You know, it's how you spread the gospel, isn't it?
It is.
You seek to win people to your cause. There are different ways of doing it right now, though, aren't there? Particularly in the depths of a lockdown. Do it online. I mean, you know, I'm a Mass-going Catholic. I was as annoyed as many other Catholics were that I couldn't go to Mass.
Yes.
First time in centuries you couldn't take communion in this country. It felt ridiculous to a lot of people, but there it was. We had to go along. We have a separation in this country. Between church and state. There's the old gospel quote goes, render unto Caesar what is due to Caesar, render unto God what is due to God. We play the game, don't we?
Well, yes and no. I think the thing is this, is that the Christian Legal Centre took a case in the Scottish High Court recently and won, and put these arguments forward and said, well, hang on a second. The Scottish Government was prepared to allow juries to come and continue to deliberate over cases, but they weren't prepared to allow churches. Now, why was that? And that struck deep with the High Court judge in Scotland, and he agreed. He agreed it was a violation of human rights, number one, and number two, of Scottish constitutional law. And what we would say is this, is that you're right, we have to render unto Caesar what is Caesar, obviously social distancing and so on, but at the same time, there is still a way of bringing hope to people who aren't online, because there are homeless people, drug addicts, prostitutes and so on, who are never going to enter within a church. And those are the type of people that Christ reached, and street preachers, street evangelists want to do that.
Just a final brief thought. Does it work for him in a world of online preaching and all the rest of it? Does he still feel, you know, he's doing valuable work for the church?
I think he does, but there is two aspects to what he believes is right. You know, there's the stuff that we can do online, but more importantly, you know, Christ said that we should not give up meeting together. And so that's what a lot of Christians have believed.
Mike Phillips, appreciate you coming in. Thanks very much.
Pleasure.